Moku taku whakaoranga, me taku āwhina ki tēnei ao, me te ao, kei te haere mai. Ko koe, tūturu, te whai rawa nui katoa, mohi o katoa, te whai whakaaro nui katoa. Warm greetings, warm welcome on behalf of the Health Promotion Forum of New Zealand. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you, 30 plus participants, all of you from four corners of our motu. It's an honor to welcome you to our first webishop of the Health Promotion Forum of New Zealand. And a special welcome to our rangatira, our speaker, guest of honor for today, Wati Waru. He will share his experience with us today, and I'm sure it will be an enjoyable and great learning session for us all. Acknowledging the hard work of our team, Emma and Lavinia, and especially Mereana, who will facilitate on our behalf and work with Wati today. Again, warm welcome to all of you. Great pleasure to have you. Back to you, Mereana. And you are muted.
Kia ora sione. Tēnā rā tātou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki au koutou, ko Mereana Te Pere tōku ingoa, heuri au no Tapuika, Waitaha me Ngāti Ranginui. He tino harikoa au ki te kite a koutou, he hari tau hau ki a koutou katoa. Nau mai hoki mai ki tēnei online wānanga. Nō reira tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora koutou, my name is Mereana. Thank you for joining us today. Happy New Year to everyone out there. Hopefully 2021 is going to be a much better year than last year. And thank you for joining us. This is the first of our webshops that we're running for this year. We've got quite a few coming up. A very important kaupapa that we're talking about today. But before we get on to that, I'm going to let my very special guest, Wati Waru, introduce himself. He's a man that I've worked with for a long time. Now we've been good friends for a long time, and I'm thankful that he could join us and come and share the gold and wisdom that he has with myself and with all of you here today. Kia ora, Wati.
Kia mai koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. So my name is Wati Waru. I work with an organisation called Te Kaha o Te Whānau. That is Te Kaha o Te Whānau is made up of three organisations, Mahi Tahi, Manureo Marae and Friendship House. The mahi that we're doing is creating a new service and approach to family and sexual violence. And the approach of which we've taken is going to be quite, mixes in well with what we're going to talk about today. Yes, Mereana and I have been friends for quite some time, so there's possibly a little bit of banter that will go on, but I hope you enjoy today. Kia ora.
Thank you, Wati. All right, so before we get into the guts of today, we're just going to go over a few. I just want to go over a few things. All right, so if you've done a workshop, if you came to my last workshop or have seen the workshops that we've done before from HPF, some of the things you would have seen today, like this picture that you see before you. So some of the things we're going to go over. If you're unsure, hopefully you got a chance to see our first webshop that I sent out with the pre-activity stuff. So as you can see, this is the Te Ao Māori worldview of Aotearoa. This is the worldview that my nannies and koros grew up with, and that's where my mate's from up there, from Te Rarawa, and that's where I'm from there. So as you can see, Bay of Plenty is sometimes known as Te Moana a Toi, the ocean of Toi Kairako. That's my home there. But if we look at it from Pākehā worldview, this is how most people understand the world to be. And we're going to touch on that at some point today as well. I just want to acknowledge everyone here. So we've got people all the way from Whangarei up north and as far down as Ōtautahi, and lots of people in the middle there. I want to give a special shout out to Toi Te Ora Public Health. They've got quite a few people joining us today, plus they're two of my homers. So kia ora Toi Te Ora. And we also have lots of organizations joining us. So we have some organizations from the academic world, from governance, from regional sports trusts, from not-for-profit organizations, and also strategic development. What I would like to do, firstly, thank you for joining us, but also near the end of this webshop, I'm going to call on your expertise, because just like the title, every day is Waitangi Day. This is not a one-off. I'm hoping that in the future, everyone here and even people that aren't joining us today, we can somehow network together and share how we are implementing treaty-based strategies. But I'll get onto that a little bit later. I also want to acknowledge our competition winners, Geneva, Connie, and Joyce. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us. And most importantly, the Health Promotion Forum team, Emma, Sione, Lavinia, and our guest Wati. So you might hear, some voices, some angel voices come across your screen and your ears. So that's the team here, and they'll just give us little prompts on what to do as we go along. All right, so this is our first webshop for the year. So my role is Māori Health Promotion Strategist. I take care of the Māori Health Promotion side of things. And today is our first of a series of 4 webshops looking at different health providers and what they're doing around Aotearoa. So today we're starting in Tāmaki in South Auckland with Te Kaha o Te Whānau. But in the next ones, I'm hoping to get around to the different rohe as far up as Tapuika and even down south. So again, I would love to stay in contact with you all here. Maybe you'd like to join me as a guest speaker in the future. Hopefully, that would be awesome, especially our whānau from down south. I'd really love to pick your brains on what you guys are doing down there. But the kaupapa will be a little bit different. So yes, so this is from HPF, this is the first for the Māori series, 1 of 4. Also, we have an overarching kaupapa that we're driving this year, so health of the planet and the environment. That's our kaupapa that we want to focus on with HPF, just because it's reaching crisis mode, as we know. So we really want to promote that sort of planetary health, environmental awareness, that sort of stuff. What else? Yeah, that's it. All right, so today, this is the format that we're going to follow, just in case you go get a cup of tea and you miss a little bit. So we have 2 key questions. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, and then our guest speaker is going to share with you the magical stuff that they do in their organization. Keeping in mind, every hapu, every Māori community have different needs. What Wati is sharing is the needs of the people, the community for Auckland and South Auckland. Then after that, after Wati speaks, I'm going to ask you all to share some insights that you have about the kaupapa, to ask questions, to comment. That's what a wānanga is. A wānanga isn't about me talking, you listen. It's about everyone participating. So, and that's how we all get better. So please get involved on that chat. There's no, don't wait for me to tell you. You just go at it whenever you feel like it. And Lavinia is going to monitor that for us. Then we're going to do that again for the second question. And at the end, whānau, we're going to have a big fat smiley face family photo at the end. So show us your pretty face at the end. Ka pai. Yep, so ask questions, make comments, do all of that whenever you feel. Excuse me. All right, so these are our key questions today. What does a treaty-based organization look like? And 2, Indigenous or Māori models of practice. How can my organization, as in your organization, develop these types of approaches? Okay, because that's where we want to go. What we don't want to do, or what we want to try and stay away from, whānau, is these particular things. We might touch on these things, but really the focus is on treaty-based organizations. So today is not a history lesson on Te Tiriti or the treaty, because they're two different things. Hopefully you have done some training before. Some of you mentioned when you replied to the questions that you had, which is awesome. If you haven't, I encourage you to go and do that. But today is not really about Te Tiriti, like the history type stuff. It's more about the organizational stuff that we can do today. We'll touch on Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā, not a whole lot, but that will come in as well. We will probably almost definitely talk about racism and discrimination at some point. But again, we want the focus to be on the positive stuff, on how we can, what we can do today in the now. Yeah, we want, if you came today hoping to have a bit of a debate about that sort of stuff, we'll leave that for another forum. There's plenty of online forums on Facebook where you can go and have a debate there. But today we want to, I only have you for an hour and a half, so I really want to get that the juicy stuff out for today. And I just want to acknowledge also, lastly, before we move on, everyone has their own personal relationship with Te Tiriti. Everyone's at different places with how they experience it, and we understand that. So today might be quite it might bring up a bit of discomfort, a bit of anger, a bit of sadness, a bit of frustration, all of those things. Everyone is different. And I acknowledge that. But I want to make the point that really our focus is on not so much people's hurt feelings. They might sound a little bit mean, but people don't die from hurt feelings, but people do die from policies that don't provide health equity or health access. So this is a really strong kaupapa personally for myself, and that's where we want to go. We want to address those things. So hopefully your discomfort doesn't make it too hard for today. Kia ora for that one. All right, the goals for today, here we go. The approaches and strategies for you and your organization to implement that complies with Te Tiriti or Waitangi, including looking at a Māori model of practice. In your guys' responses, some of you use it all at different stages. A lot of people didn't respond. That's okay too. That's fine. That wasn't a test. But it's very clear that organizations are at different levels of treaty-based compliance. So today we want to take away some strategies. I would like you to go home after today with some strategies and approaches of what you can do when you go back to mahi, and you can help make a change and keep yourself safe, because that's the second point as well. Strategies to keep yourself safe, because that's very, very important. All right, warm up to activity. Before we move on, warm up activity. So some of you gave your responses, which were amazing. Thank you for that. I could feel the passion from the people who responded. So I think today I'm definitely speaking to a group of social justice warriors who are already converted. I don't feel like I have to debate anything around that. But the important thing to know is that there's a few of us who are in that waka. There are a few of you, sorry, who are in that waka. And your organization, what is your organization willing to do? Again, that was a mixture of responses. What I did want to mention, so there are a lot of mainstream organizations here today, and that's okay. That's, this is for everyone, not just Māori organizations. So when I sent out those questions, they were more rhetorical questions, not so much a test or, a measurement of how everyone's doing out there. I just wanted everyone to think about those questions, because what a lot of people don't understand is when you fight for treaty-based anything, or as soon as people hear the word treaty, that puts you in a category. A lot of people that you'll work with will react in a, that scares a lot of people. So if that's you, if you've already been doing it for a long time, you probably already know this. But if you're, starting out in your career and this is something that you're just starting to think about and pay attention to, know that when you advocate for treaty-based principles in your mahi, you put yourself at a bit of a risk. So you can find yourself in a position where a lot of people, or not a lot of people, where some people may not like you. You might become socially isolated. You might anger certain people at levels that are higher than you. And that puts you in a tough position sometimes, especially in mainstream organizations, and especially if you're Māori. Anyone can feel this, but for Māori, it can feel extra discriminatory. So just know that when you are advocating for treaty-based stuff, that's the position you're putting yourself into. Also, what I've learned, I'm no spring chicken anymore. What I've learned is that changes towards treaty partnership, that's a marathon race. Okay, it's not a sprint. And it's important that we as health promoters don't get overwhelmed by the big machine that it can be sometimes, depending on who we work with. So sometimes it can feel overwhelming. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And also know that when you talk about Te Tiriti principles, that is an effort to disrupt racism. And again, that puts you're automatically given labels in your mahi. So just know that it's not an easy cause, but it's one that we should all be a part of, because when you live in New Zealand, that's part of the deal. Te Tiriti is part of the deal, and everyone is part of that. So yes, I just wanted to make notes of that sort of stuff. And the key themes that I got from everyone, most from the organizational stuff, the themes that I heard quite a few times was lack of commitment to make changes from the organization, lack of resources, sometimes tokenistic / tick box positions or activities or training. A lot of organizations are just doing lip service, saying things but not doing it. Some organizations are providing treaty workshops, which is good to hear, but then afterwards the training is not implemented, and there is a lack of skilled workforce. So people are trying to recruit Māori into their organizations, but they're just not out there, and the skilled workforce isn't out there. So those are the key themes that were resonating with all of you today. All right, I'm nearly finished, and I'll let Wati take over. But before I hand it over, so I just wanted to look at what does a treaty-based organization look like. Now, these things here, they are a very quick, generic summary of what's out there in terms of the articles and policies disclaimer, I'm no policy expert, I'm no governance expert, but most Māori can tell you that you know when an organization is working for the treaty principles. So I've pretty much summed up these 3 things that we can look at. So when I say, I mean us, these are the things we should be looking at within our own organization, and deciphering whether or not we feel like our organization is doing it right or doing anything at all, and how we could be treaty based. All right, so we've got Article 1, kāwanatanga. These are, by the way, these are the articles in relation to health, not the articles themselves. You have to go away and do a whole lot of research for that sort of stuff. But what we're talking about is how it relates to health, how the articles relate to health. All right, Article 1, kāwanatanga governance. So what should we be looking for? Hopefully the governance structures in our organizations include local hapu and iwi representatives. So on our boards of directors, advisors, on policy boards, ideally, there's a Māori representative from the local hapu. That would be the best thing. Hopefully our organization is engaging in Māori policy development from the start. So that means I've got this policy. Sorry, what it doesn't mean is I've got this policy document. It's 99% finished. Kia ora kororangi, can you look over this real quick and sign it off? That's not what it should be. It should be, kia ora, can we look over this, create this, develop this from the very get-go? All right, hopefully you're thinking about the way your organization does that right now. Also, on your governance boards, you should be hopefully utilizing the knowledge of Māori iwi providers, of Māori scholars, and of Māori practitioners. So that's the people out doing the mahi as well, not just you're the highest academics. And that's all to ensure equitable Māori participation. Article 2, rangatiratanga, so that's around decision making. So policies, we should be having policies that give and embed decision making powers to Māori. So as an example, at HPF and on our board, there's a policy that 50% of the board must be Māori. Not just one representative, but actually 50% of the board should be Māori. And so that's a type of policy that ensures that Māori have equal status and equal decision-making powers. Also, we need to look at other policies, performance and evaluation that our organization is doing. Are they developed and informed by Māori experts as well? Or was it cut and pasted off the internet? I don't know, but we want to make sure that it's our Māori experts that are informing those things. And also they're informed by Māori values. What I've seen a lot is that a lot of organizations, they create these values that have, they're Māori values, but the meaning has been taken out of the dictionary and has been lost. The real essence of those words have been lost because they thought they could just take words out of the dictionary, slap them on the wall, and hey ho, we're doing our bit for the treaty. That's not enough. That shouldn't be what's happening, but it does happen. So, you again, look at your organization. How are they coming up with their Māori values? Are they informed by the local hapu or Māori experts? Just things to think about. And also, ōritetanga, which is around equity, Article 3. All right, are the efforts of my organization, are they sustained? Are they constantly looking to recruit Māori into the workforce? Or, tried it once 2 years ago and haven't done it since? That effort needs to be sustained. Policies need to state very clear outcomes, you know, not just a wishy-washy, you know, we want the best for all people. Those they need to be clear targets, and not just good intentions, you know, a good plan. And commitment. Someone mentioned that their organization doesn't lacks commitment. Okay, so again, what are the steps in place to ensure there's commitment to achieve those goals? This is, you know, this is organizational stuff. I mean, I'm not sure where you sit in your organization, but I do feel these are things that everyone should pay attention to. And also wairuatanga, it's not in the Te Tiriti, but it's something that has been identified as critical to Māori health, and that is wairuatanga, spiritual practices and well-being. Okay, so that needs to be acknowledged and accommodated in all of those areas as well. You can't have health without wairuatanga. And again, your policies, performance and evaluation processes should acknowledge the importance of wairua as well. All right. So if we look at it in picture form, there you see the tree and you have the roots, and all these things down bottom should start at the highest level. And if they're informed by Te Tiriti, they should help to grow a very strong foundation and a very strong tree. At the highest level is important. Sometimes you get organizations, they come in, you know, along the way, and they bring in cultural competency training and cultural advisor roles, which is good. But if the foundation isn't strong, those things can fall off, and it's only as long as those roles are available or those trainings are given. If funding runs out, then that doesn't happen anymore. Or if a new leadership comes in, they might not have that cultural advisor role there either. So that's just in picture form. That's what our organizations should look like if they're treaty based. All right, so what can I do? This is for all of us. All right, take up leadership roles, whānau, put yourself into those roles. You know, elevate yourself so you can have influence. Something I did, get involved in advisory, consultation, policy reviews, and meetings if possible. Sometimes you're not invited to them. That's more for the senior management, not so much for the underlings. But sometimes you can be like me and invite yourself. Might not be good for your reputation. But you know, if you feel like it needs to be done, then just invite yourself to those meetings. Also, something we talked about in the team is capitalize on the social movements that are happening right now. So Black Lives Matter, recently Nanaia Mahuta changed legislation so that Māori wards couldn't have a referendum against them. Stuff did their apology about racism. There's ihumātao, the resignation of the Oranga Tamariki CEO. So now more than ever is the time where people are really pushing for social justice. And if you can carry on that whakaro, those thoughts, that kōrero, that discussion, that culture change and shift in your organization, that can help for your cause as well. You know, don't just take it on all by yourself. Really capitalize on these movements. Try and create that culture change or influence the culture change in your organization. And also run initiatives to promote social justice change. Get political support if you can. So I know some of you come from government organizations, so it's a bit hard to do that. But if not, you know, try and get that support. You know, it's, you know, that can help. You know, if you don't have those structures at the top, that can help in pushing for change or influencing change. One thing I wouldn't recommend, or that I was told is probably not a good idea, is whistleblowing. Now, you can do it if you want to, but that's high risk. And, you know, I understand that if you're young and you have a family or you have small children, sometimes that risk is not worth it, and that's totally understandable too. sometimes when you're a little bit older and established, you can afford to take that risk. But yeah, whistleblowing is high risk. All right, last one before I hand it over to you, Wati. How can I keep myself safe? This is important. Depending on where you work, sometimes it can be real hard. And sometimes it's not so bad. I'm lucky in the environment that I work with now. The organization I work with is amazing. I'm very safe. I'm free to be Māori however I please, and I have that autonomy. But not all organizations are like that. And this is for Māori and non-Māori too. All right, so what can you do to keep yourself safe? Create a staff or industry network so that if you have ideas, if you have, things changes that you want to see, you present them as a collective because there's safety in numbers. They can't come after the individual. Build positive relationships. If you're a strong leader, your mana and your integrity will carry you. Okay, that helps a lot. So build those relationships, do that groundwork, build that foundation for you so that your mana and your integrity will uphold you as well. Create avenues for non-Māori to enter to our Māori world. So building bridges of cultural understanding. Someone mentioned that that's what they're doing in their mahi as well. That one can be a little bit cause a bit of tension sometimes. Sometimes you come across people who will have the attitude of, why should I teach you? Why should I hold your hand? My ancestors had been getting a hard time, and now you expect us to hold your hand. It's not my job to do that. And those attitudes are fear, and you shouldn't expect people to want to hold your hand if you're non-Māori, but there are people out there that are willing to do that. So you just gotta feel it out wherever you are. You just gotta kind of get a gauge of where things are at. If you're Māori and you want to create those avenues, that's cool. If you're non-Māori and you want to find those avenues, that's cool too. It depends on where you come from. If you don't have those avenues, I suggest you go to local Māori communities and health providers and ask them for guidance. Build your support networks. That's what I'd like for us to do after today. I know there's some network specialist organizations in here, and that's what they do. If we could do that and we could carry on this corridor throughout the year, that would be amazing. Because I don't want us to walk away from today and then just forget about everything. So yeah, share your concerns, share your strategies, create new ones, and offer professional support. Sometimes it can be one person in a whole organization that's in this position. Also promote Māori initiatives. So Te Reo Māori, tikanga, matariki, promote those in your organization. Create a new cultural norm where, the more you talk about it, the less scary it becomes for people who are not used to Māori things. And lastly, work within your sphere of influence. So that means figure out in your role what you can do safely, what you can realistically achieve, and work within that sphere with the people that you're around. Don't try and take on the machine or the beast all by yourself. Well, you can if you want to, but if you want it to be a little bit more achievable and not so stressful on your heart and your soul, work within your sphere of influence. That's something that Heather Kainwhaia mentioned. All right, that's enough of me. I'm going to hand it over to my friend Wati, and he's going to share everything, all the stuff he does. Well, not all the stuff, but what he's doing at Te Kaha o Te Whānau. Ka pai, Wati.
Yes, awesome. Ka pai. Hey, thank you for that, Mereana. Very insightful. It's quite interesting, eh? So, yeah, what I have to share with you all encapsulates all of that. But before we do get into this, what I'm going to ask you, can you all put on your videos so I can see your faces? For wānanga, for us, it's good to see people's faces, eh? then I can also see your āhua and your ngāka, your wairua as well as we talk. Plus, the other thing too is that it just feels like I'm talking to my computer if everyone's blacked out. So I'm going to change my view so I can see all of you, hopefully. Would you be able to turn your presentation off? Yes, there we go. Fantastic. It's awesome to see these absolutely brilliant faces. What you can also do, and I believe that you'll be able to bring me up on your screen is the speaker if you want to, but I really want to see your faces and see, you know, your wairua, your āhua and all that sort of stuff. If you want to go make yourself a cup of tea and a coffee, ka pai. I take milk and 2 sugars, so you can make me a virtual one if you want to. But yeah, all good. It's all good. It's something that we do. It is something that we do on a marae. You know, we come together with kōrero, people walk in, people walk out, kids are running around, some people are laughing and smiling. It's ka pai. So that's why I wanted to see your faces. If you can see behind me, this thing right here is called Awhina. Awhina is a code in which we've developed. So about 2-3 years ago, MSD did this big travel around the whole country, talking to different rohe, hapu and iwi about family and sexual violence. As they started to formulate what they thought needed to be addressed, because MSD realized that the approach at that time was not working. It was starting to be, people were becoming generational, and they were coming back in. Whānau, we helped, and then moved on, and then they come back in many, many years later on. So what we did, and what they did was, the beginning of last year, here in Tāmaki, they brought a whole heap of different organizations and people together, and we started talking about family and sexual violence. So there are 3 regions in Tāmaki itself: West Auckland, Central Auckland, and South Auckland. And we would come together and we would wānanga for days on end about what we were doing. And in all honesty, because we had a blank piece of paper to work off, we were literally starting right from the beginning. We had no clue what we were doing. So we just wānanga and we talked and kōrero. But then we had people like Paparereata who came in and gave us an insight into Māori's thinking, how Māori think. So these stories about Maui and the sun and how Maui fished up New Zealand is true, you know. So as we started to travel here to New Zealand, to be able to understand and put into context what they were seeing, some marker points on the way, rather than writing it down, because we're not a written people. We don't write things. We carve, we waiata, we kanikani. That's how we do things. That's how we retain our information. So these stories that come along were marker points for them to understand where they were and what they were doing. So hearing about Maui and the sun, how when the rays at a certain time of the year, you can see these rays coming out from the sun. You know, those are the ropes that Maui used to slow the sun down. In the scientific point of view, is because it's reflecting off the ozone layer and this and that. But in our way of thinking, it was, okay, I know I'm in New Zealand at a certain point in time, which is really good for, could be growing, fishing, whatever. We just knew for the maramataka that was coming through. Also, you know, with all that thinking, and then we had Ricky Solomon to come and talk to us about the maramataka, when is a good day to have hui, when is not a good day to have hui. So then with our thinking, we had to try and figure out, how do we overcome this? How do we, so that we can ensure that we're still moving forward, how do we address that? Within Awhina, I have to acknowledge 13 other organisations. So there's Manureo Marae, Mahitahi, Friendship House, Huakina, Waiuku Family Trust, Franklin Family Trust, the NHC, Te Hononga, and also Papakura Marae. So these are all these people that came together and we created this. Awhina, in the normal sense, we all know what Awhina is. If you don't know what Awhina is, the best thing to do is go and have a look for it and actually come up with your meaning of Awhina, because it can mean different things to different people. But if you have an understanding of what you think Awhina is, then that's something for you. But in the sense of Awhina, so I'm rocking back and forth, the A, it's an acronym. Awhina is an acronym. So A is for aroha, and the way we work with our whānau, okay? Everything is done with love. There's always a purpose for it. W there is for whakapapa. Now we understand what whakapapa is, but what we're talking about whakapapa in this context is that the situation that the family is in now, there is a beginning to where they came from, and gives us an understanding. Once we can understand that, then we can break down where they went a bit left or a bit right, and then try and give them the resources to come back and carry on with their whānau and start having a positive sort of outcome at the end. H is hauora. So we all work in a realm that's very deep, sometimes very dark. And so our whānau need to look after themselves, but we also need to look after ourselves. If we can't look after ourselves and we're not in the right frame of mind, then we cannot help and work with those whānau. Okay, the I is for inoi. Now, we realize that inoi was a very strong word. So we change it to ingoa. Inoi is still there, but ingoa, because your name is strong. Okay, you were given your name for a reason, so uphold that name. So that's why I asked for you to put your screens on so I can see your name and see your face as well. So that was really important for us. N stands for ngaka, your heart. Okay, just like aroha, is your heart in the right place? Is it really in the right place? Is it? And it goes back to the questions that Mereana asked. What are you willing to do for your organization? What are you willing to do? What are you willing? Are you willing to lose your job over this to help this whānau? You know, just those sort of things. Asking yourself those hard questions. And the last A is ako. So all this learning, everything that we've learned at the moment, we put it all together. We put all this learning together with the whānau, and then they create their pathway forward. Awhina was created by the whānau voice and has been led by the whānau. Everything we do comes from the whānau. So before we even started putting anything together, we went and saw the whānau and we asked them the questions. Tell us where you've come from, what's the whakapapa to your story, and what's the solution to your story? Or what's the solution to your journey? Sorry, not your story, your journey. What is their solution? Because they have their solutions. You know, it was simple. Oh, this happened to me when I was younger, and this is what's happening to me now. And WINS isn't doing this, so they have all that. And so what do you think you should do? Oh, well, we should do this and we should do that. So they have their solutions. But one of the questions that was asked, if they have their solutions, then why are they still in this predicament? But my response was, they have the solutions, but they don't have the resources to be able to fulfill their plan to go forward. So Awhina is a new approach to whānau and family and sexual violence. At the moment, as we all sit together, and as I share this with you, as minimal as it is at the moment, you are literally becoming Awhina as well. So you'll become part of Awhina and our approach to the whānau. We are trying to break down these barriers for the whānau that create anxiety for them. So barriers such as referral forms, having to go over to another organisation and actually tell their story again. So if you count all the people that are sitting here, if I was to refer those whānau onto every single one of you, by the time of the end of the first referral, they're going to be hoha and over it, and then they'll be gone. So that's where that problem is. Within Awhina, we have a service tree as well. So that service tree has all the different organisations. So within our Awhina, we have one organisation who offers only 6 services in the organisation. But now they're part of Awhina, they can now offer over 100 services to this whānau. So that's a big, huge, and a big jump for them. We break down other barriers too, like in our contract. So as we all know, in your contract, it says you can only work in this area and you can only work in that area. Because if you go beyond that area, the funding in your contract is not going to extend out. So these are some of the things that our organisations have to try and deal with. When we developed Awhina, we brought all our CEOs. We had 13 CEOs sitting in the room, and we explained Awhina to them and about breaking down those barriers. These are different, totally different. And all these CEOs turned to each other and said, yes, we are going to work together. Now that's phenomenal to have 13 CEOs go, yes, I will do that. So what that means is if I have a whānau and I come out to you, could be in Whangarei, we know our whānau are transient, so they could be in Whangarei, they could head down to the South Island. Ka pai. Rather than sending a digital form, we would actually come with them. And then through Awhina, we can actually give you word for word what they have told us to you. And that's a big thing for our whānau. Then they don't have to repeat themselves over and over and over. So that's a huge thing. We come from a Māori point of view, a Māori lens, but it's the values and beliefs that we have that makes us different to anything else. We know that this can go into other cultures, the Samoan culture, the Tongan culture, the Chinese, the Colombian culture. We know Awhina can actually fit into those different communities. It can go into the rainbow culture as well. And that's something we're trying to work closely with as well. Because at the end of the day, the word whānau resilience is the word whānau that precedes everything else. When you become whānau, you're whānau. You're not Tongan, you're not Samoan, you're whānau. But we know that Awhina can go into these different communities because we'll put it in front of them. We'll put it in front of them and we'll explain it to them. And straight away they go, yep, we get that. We know that and we can work with that. So that's a huge thing. The 3 different regions in Auckland work differently. South Auckland is different again. So South Auckland itself was broken into 2 regions. We had South 1, Takiwa 1, which goes from, I think it's Otahuhu up to Central Auckland. And then we had South 2, Takiwa, which goes from Manukau all the way down to Franklin. So we cover, and we use the Manukau County's DHB boundary, and we can actually cover that whole boundary for our whānau. I'm coming down to Gisborne next week to share this with the whānau down in Gisborne. So as you can see, the kaupapa is going to grow. Sitting here today with you is also allowing this kaupapa to grow. So if we take the normal, the normal mum, dad, son, daughter, as that collective, they have a voice. In Awhina, they have 9 extra voices, so their story is heard. Now, sitting in front of you, we're going to make that noise even louder. So now it truly comes down to, it takes a community to raise a child. And that's what we're trying to do, is create that community to wrap around our whānau. And so forth, so forth. The Treaty of Waitangi is within Awhina. It's in the writing of it all. Simple, you just have to look at that. It's in there. The partnership, MSD sent us their questions, how they wanted to be. We wrote back to them and said, well, if you want something different, then you cannot ask those questions, because you're just sending us back to somewhere where you don't want us to be. So we wānanga, we sat down, we talked about it, and we asked us the simple question: how does that feel to you? How does it feel to the whānau, and what does it invoke? So what we did, we took the question and we looked at our whakatauki that we have, and we turned the question into a whakatauki. So that's how we answered those questions from MSD, is through the whakatauki, because it explains everything. The problem is that Westminster Abbey system does not understand what we do. So what do? We do what we do normally. We go to knock on their door and say, kia ora, we'll come here to kōrero to you, face to face. And then we can share that stuff with them. So we are only a matter of days of signing off Awhina for it to become an actual service. We're going to work it for the next year to iron things out, to make sure that Awhina is written from the family's voice, the whānau voice. Everything is from the whānau voice, not from our organisation. And then we have another 3 or 4 more years to keep working this. And then we will have another 4 years. So we're looking at this being a 20-year plus process that we're going through with Awhina. And at some stage, when you ring me up, because I'll get this out to you, my phone number, email, we will come and share that with you, because it's good for the whānau. We know it's good for the whānau because that's what they told us. They told us what they want. They told us how they do it. So our next step is to sit in front of MSD today and to tell them exactly what it's about, and to say to MSD, you have to ask us the question from an Awhina point of view. So don't come in and ask me, how many FTEs do you want? Because we want every single FTE that you can offer. Don't come and ask us, how much money do you think it's going to take to run this? Because we're going to undervalue ourselves anyway. So don't ask us those questions. The questions they should be asking is, okay, let's start at 1,000 FTEs and start working down. No, let's start at 1,000 FTEs and start working up. The other one is, the question should be, hey, tell you what, we'll just give you the money and go away. So that's how we see that. But in reality of it all, there's this partnership. And so by sitting with MSD, having them ask their questions in their manner, because they're accountable to the Westminster Abbey ideology, and we are answerable to our whānau. So it's a totally different thing. We are answerable every step of the way to our whānau. And so that's the difference between what we're doing. But now it's just time to bring them in. Yeah. So that's kind of like what we're doing at the moment. For my organisation, Friendship House, we looked at opening a individual organisation solely based for Māori. But after talking with the powers to be, they suggested that we go into a treaty-based organisation, which is fantastic. So please don't ask me about that, because they're still in talks and it's very new. But what we do know is that once we go to the treaty-based organisation, Friendship House is going to implement Awhina into their mahi. Every single organisation who's part of Awhina has agreed to implement Awhina into their organisation. Now, in saying that, it doesn't change the way that they function and do things. It's just an ability for their whānau to have their story and own their story, okay? So even though we collect it, the problem is, and I'm sure you can all agree with that, we change the narrative to try and fit what the questions are asked from our contracts that we hold. So that's not right, because we lose the essence of their kōrero. So what we're saying is that we need that contract to change to suit the whānau's kōrero, because they own it. We talked about, people were talking about referrals, no referral form. They've got to sign this waiver because Privacy Act said sign this waiver. If our whānau decide, no, I'm going to share it, then we don't have to take them through the stresses of sign this paper, write that paper. But in saying that, we're still in sort of kōrero about that process. But when we take the whānau with their kōrero to another organisation, we literally take their kōrero that they have given, so that organisation hears the same words, the same phrasing, the same empathy, emphasis in the kōrero. And that's a huge thing. So, yeah, that's only a snippet of what we're doing. Does anyone have any questions? Because I'm not too good at talking all the time.
I've got a couple of things I want to touch on, if that's all right, Wati. Just to share with everyone.
Yeah.
While I'm talking though, anyone can, like, now is question time. So if you have any questions, put them up on the chat. But some things that I picked up on, Wati, that I feel, and we've had these kōreros before, some things you mentioned, people will struggle to understand and struggle to come to grips with. So things like the whānau have authority. You know, you the Māori Health, or the health provider, have authority, and you design what it looks like, and you know, and that can be quite hard for a lot of people to accept, because that's not what they're used to. You know, you get told, a lot of Māori communities get told what they have to do, and the passion that you speak with, and the you know, it's your rights and you're not going to compromise your right, that can be quite confrontational for some people. And I'll be honest, even myself, I don't find it confrontational. I was like, wow, that's different to what we usually see. And again, that's challenging, you know, the perspectives, and that's giving equal status to Te Ao Māori, which is a treaty-based approach that not a lot of people are used to. And also, you know, Awhina is not a program. Awhina is not this thing you've put in a box. Awhina is Awhina. You know, you know, you're not letting other people define what you're doing. The families are defining what they're doing for themselves. Again, some people will struggle with it. What is that? What is Awhina? Awhina is Awhina. And you know, even myself, we have to relinquish our wants to define you for my understanding. And I feel like that's what a lot of health organizations do. And one of the biggest one I want to bring up is, you know, you said, you know, how Maui slowed the sun. Most, you know, everyone in New Zealand will say, oh, that's a myth. That didn't really happen. And you're standing in front of us saying, no, that's true. You know, and again, that's going to challenge people. How do I accept that these families, this is their truth and this is their interpretation of the world? And how do I respect that whilst, you know, and hand over that mana to the families? I think that's something that most organizations would struggle with.
I think, it's definitely you. And it goes back to your question, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do to get the truth out there? The system, you know, let's take the police. They want to hear what they want to hear because they're actually trying to create a case against you. So they'll hear what they want to hear. Now, I may be wrong in that thing, but come on, they always say, okay, what happened? But they don't get to the crux of it. They don't allow the whānau to actually say what really went on. So yeah, it is hard, but it's what we do as a people. You know, Māori, they do that. It's just, we listen to each other. You listen to your whānau, you listen to your nannies, because there is some truth behind it. We just don't judge it. It is what it is. But yeah, it's going to be hard for people to bring their mind thought around to that concept. But you all will, if not, if you're already there.
A couple of other things too that you said that I think some people do, some people don't, and some people try, is you said whānau decide what their success and strategy is. They determine what their success and their strategy will look like. And, you know, as someone who's worked in a government agency before, you know, you have this tension of government requires this, whānau needs this, not working together, they clash. And again, it goes back to what, you know, what are people willing to do in their mahi? So it's just, you know, we have to be real with what it looks like out there, and that it's not always a straightforward process.
Yeah, it's you know, the only at the moment the way they're they can't break out of that box. You know, if you go into OT, if you end up in that system, they say, well, you have to do this, and this. And if you can't do this, and this, you have to stay in that box until they're satisfied that you meet those criteria. But in Awhina, if they can create their plan to go forward because they own it, and we can give them the resources to fulfill that, you're going to have a better outcome because they've owned it. They own it. They haven't been given the structure to say, do this and stay with them both. Because that's the only way they can really keep their finger on them, is keep them in this box. Hey, but yeah, it's all different.
Do we have any questions coming through?
Yeah, we do have a question, Mereana and Wati, but thank you to all the participants who have contributed with the answer in chat. One of the questions, you may have an answer for them, Wati and Mereana, is from Cheryl in Christchurch. Keen to know if anyone has any recommendations on who runs outstanding Te Tiriti workshops with organizations, particularly ones that also include really practical ideas for implementing Te Tiriti specific to the mahi of the organization doing the training.
I think I do know of someone, but it's been a long time since I've seen them, so I might have to take them out for a coffee and lunch to reconnect with them. And this person runs a brilliant workshop. What she does is she talks about the treaty and how a treaty functions, especially the Treaty of Waitangi. They don't get into the articles and Hobson and Māori and things like that, but it gives you a good understanding of how that treaty functions. And then later on, once you've got that, then they come in with all the other stuff about the treaty, Māori point of view, Pākehā point of view. And so, yeah, I'll have to find that person again. It's been a couple of years. I'm sure they're close somewhere.
There's lots of treaty workshops available out there, but I don't know of any that can work to create implementation strategies with specific organizations. There might be a couple in Massey, but I'm not sure about Christchurch. I think that was for Cheryl. So I think I added in the chat that I can have a look and send some resources out after today, which I plan to do. Not sure about Christchurch though. I've never been to Christchurch, so I'll have to do a bit more digging. But if anyone else knows, please help Cheryl out, because that's what we're here for. Any other questions, Lavinia?
No other questions, actually. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to enter them in chat, and I'll relay them to Wati and Mereana.
All right,
But at the moment, there's no more questions.
ka pai. We'll just move on. Should we move on to our second part? What's, are you okay with that?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so Māori models of practice. How can the organization I work for develop these types of approaches? So I've got some examples. I'm hoping Wati can maybe talk about his from the pit to the pai, or from the pai to the pit. Sorry, Wati, I'll let you clarify that one.
Ka pai.
But I just wanted to go over some examples of Māori models and some not good examples. So this is from Te Wānanga or Aotearoa. So they have, so when they develop their models, they do it with academic scholars and representatives from all the different iwi. And so on the left there you have their values as an organization, and on the right you have their framework for learning, which is called ako wānanga. And they use the marae and the environment and the and the koru as a basis to build their models from. And this is a model from Te Arapautama, Department of Corrections. So they created a model called Te Tokorima a Maui, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values. But I'm going to criticize that model right now, because when they created this model, it wasn't informed by any hapu or iwi. And the values that they chose, the rangatiratanga, manakitanga, the meanings are very watered down versions of the true essence of what manaki means. And even the story of Te Tokorima a Maui is a very contentious story and origin. So again, it's not, this is I would say is an example of a framework that is not as weak. It's a weak framework, a weak model, because it wasn't guided properly when it was created. They kind of changed the meanings, which is not in keeping with Te Tiriti at all. This is Te Pai Mahutonga, the Health Promotion model, and it is based on the Southern Cross Star constellation. Again, the environment, living entities, living elements. So when Māori look at the environment, it's not it's not just a science, it's elements that we move through. And also the Māramataka from Dr. Rangi Mātāmua. So it's a Māori calendar based on, harvest, the time to harvest crops, and also the stars, and each star has a story, has a kaupapa, and everything is connected. So this is a strong model as well. So I was wondering, Wati, if you could talk about from the pit to the pai.
Okay.
Your guys' model?
We've developed this thing called pit to the pai. Now, when I tell you it's based around the hangi pit. So there's probably a lot of you going, yep, I get it already. And it's true. You probably will get it. So there's different stages within the creation of a hangi, really. So we broke that process down, and really pit to the pai for us is it gives the whānau an ability to create or tell their story, their journey, where they're going, and what is the solution to it. So if I like it, the first part of gathering the rocks, the wood, getting the kai, and all that sort of stuff, that part is about collecting their kōrero, what we call their tangata kōrero, the whānau kōrero. So we're collecting all that, and we're bringing their kōrero back. Then the digging of the hole and preparing the rocks and the wood for burning, that's where we start to put together and filter out all the things that really don't need to be in there through our kōrero with the whānau. So if it's a small twig, you don't need that because it's not going to burn long enough. So if they just tell us something that goes off kilter a bit, then we can say, hey, let's bring it back. So that's what that part is about. The covering of the, so part of the building of the hangi is also preparing the kai. Okay, so preparing the hangi basket with the food in it is, those are the you're going to get from it when we finish this. The next part, or the third stage, is when you start putting the hangi down, covering it. And so what that means is now is for the whānau to start producing, start to move forward, start to work their plan, okay, start to doing the things that they need to do, whether it's anger management, whether it's dealing with OT, whether it's dealing with MSD, housing. So the putting their plan into fruition. Then once we pull it out and we pull the kai out, that's when we can sit back and go, hey, you've done a fantastic job. You've got what you needed to do. You're working yourself out of something and you're starting to move forward. When your nannies, and then the last part of it all is when your nannies go, oh, that's a nice kai, you're doing really good. And if you're consistent in your hangi, then they will turn around and go, from now on, that is your role, is to carry on that, making that hangi, producing that kai, solving those problems. And sometimes not for themselves, for other people, because they've been through that. The pai part is that each stage has a pinnacle that they want to get to. So if they're collecting and they get to the pinnacle, then they know because they're safe and they're happy, and it goes forward. And at the end, when we're sharing the kai, you got to the taumata, and then you can say, hey, I've done it, we've done it. And they know that they've done it is because their house is safe, their house here. They can deal with situations, whereas before they would do it negatively. But now when they're faced with problems, they can deal with it straight away, but in a positive manner. Now we say that it's finished there, but it's not. It's just the beginning of a new pit to the pai. So we're going to add on. So that's pretty much our model about how whānau, once again, can create their journey and share that with us so we can make sure we have the right resources for them to move forward. Yeah. And the good thing about hangi pits too, and if you're really glued up with hangi pits, if you've got a hangi pit that's been there for years and years and years, you can imagine all your kaumātua and koe that have walked around that, sharing the same story with the next generation as they come up. And then your mums or your dads sharing their stories as they come up, and so forth and so forth. Here's why we use pit to the pai, the hangi hole to the taumata.
I think we've got a question.
Yeah, I've got a question here from for you, Wati, from Joyce. Joyce asks, from what I hear, the whanau vision and power base ×2 the treaty and whanau is counter-hegemonic. How does the vision sit within non-Māori worldviews? If they were open to adapting the Awhina vision in order to work with whanau, maybe in a kaupapa Māori-driven organisation, and would that be implemented into the policies and procedures?
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. For non-Māori, so Awhina is, even though we're saying it's from a Māori point of view, we use a lot of Māori, like whakatauki, the pit to the pai, because we know those, we understand those. You don't have to say much. You go, oh, pit the hangi hole, straight away, you can kind of envision it. For non-Māori, when we share it with them, before we start even talking about what Awhina is about, we try to understand what their values are, their beliefs. We start to break things down. Awhina, we break it down for them bit by bit, and then we get to them to look at that and how that reflects to them. We had a Colombian guy, for example. I said to him, well, what's your whakapapa? And he goes, I don't have one. So in Colombia, do you have a mountain range? Yeah, we do. Does it have a name? Yes, it does. Why does it have that name? Oh, because this. And so when we started breaking that down, we started to see the value we had, the shared value. I said, do you have a river you go to? Yeah. what's the name of your river? Oh, it's this. Why? Oh, because that's where our forebears first came. Cool. So we started breaking that down. Now, organisations implementing it into Awhina into their mahi. The great thing about Awhina is it's easy to implement. It does not change any of their governance within their organisation. They still are able to function and do everything that they do. So it doesn't disrupt that. What Awhina does, it complements them, their governance. So what I mean by that, terminologies. When we talk about the rainbow community, when we talk about Samoan community, when we talk about perpetrators is another big one. What we talk about perpetrator is that they are whānau. They're not a perpetrator. You know, if you're already going to be pointing to them, they could have been 20 years, like one guy in our group, he works on, and he's had guys for 20 years who have never done anything since, but when they get pulled over by the police or anything, oh, so you're a perpetrator. And already it creates a negative connotation. So what we say to organizations who are willing to take this on is now start thinking about how you interact with your whānau. No more being the keyboard warriors, you know, I'll just send out this form and you go see them, create that trust with them and go. So it doesn't affect the functionality of everyone's individual organizations. It really complements it. It really brings it back to whānau led. Like I'm sure we were thinking, whānau led. Because they have all the solutions.
Awesome. Can I ask you a quick question? We're almost running out of time, so we've got 5 more minutes for questions. So if you have a question, whānau, get it in there real quick. But I just wanted to ask you, when you were developing Awhina and when you were creating what it's going to look like, the outcomes, the terminology with MSD, was it?
Sorry?
Was it with MSD?
Oh.
Ministry of Health? So when you were doing that, or whoever it was, the government agency you were working with, were there clashes and tensions, or was it a smooth process? I want to know what that looked like.
Yes, so when we developed Awhina, MSD had sent us. Actually, you can go on to MSD's website, Whānau and Family, Whānau and Sexual Violence, and it will actually give you the whole kaupapa about from the beginning till now. But what happened was MSD just said, here's a blank piece of paper, some pens, go and do what you do, because we're all frontline workers. Go do what you do. And at a specific time, we're going to ask you to send back a draft of the service or this model of practice, and we'll have a talk. We never answered their questions in the conventional manner that they used to. We turned it around and answered it from a Te Ao Māori point of view. Hence, we use our korowai and our wakahuia. So we had all those terminologies, I think, the pit to the pai. And so on the 22nd of last month, they asked us to submit a draft copy. And when we submitted to them, straight away we got the, what the hell is this? And that was ka pai, we were expecting that. So then they sent us their feedback and they said, oh, do you want to email or shall we have a Zoom hui? And we went, no, we want both. Don't half pie it for us, sorry. So we sat with them and they told us, well, it doesn't explain this and it doesn't explain that. And we go, yeah, because you're asking the wrong questions. It doesn't explain it in the way and the terminologies that you used it. So as we started talking and explaining it from a Te Ao Māori point of view, it had all their answers. So when we told them, their jaws dropped and they were like, okay, so now we have one of the MSD people come out today at 1 o'clock to sit with us for her to fully understand what we're all about. And then she can go back and then promote this. So that's weird. I mean, you got MSD coming and say, oh, I'm willing to come and help you. And I'm actually willing to help you pass the line. So Awhina has created that, not us. The whānau voice has created that. Because nothing's worse than having actual, for them, having actual evidence from whānau saying, hey, and then proof they can actually prove it. So our journey with MSD has been great. I've enjoyed it. You know, they've been confusing, they've been annoying, they've been all hard, they've been not giving us any money, but hey, as you all know, we're resourceful people, and we can come up with scones with just one bag of flour. So now we're all good. We're all good.
Oh, that's good. You know, you don't often hear when people, you know, especially when you have a Māori initiative, you don't often hear that it's a smooth process when trying to line up with what the government requires.
Can I say one thing though to that?
Yes, of course.
For us, and I like to put this word out to you, is just sticking to your convictions, really, and believing in what you're doing for the whānau. Because if your Awhina is in the right place, and your ngākau and your wairua is in the right place, nothing can happen. You've already got your korowai wrapped around you, and there's no way that they can argue that. Do you know what I mean? So that's the difference between just going in and talking. Go in the right frame of mind, an open mind, and be ready to listen. So, yeah.
Kia ora, kapa for that. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly ask, I'm going to quickly ask everyone, can you see my screen, Wati?
Yep.
All right, in the last few minutes, just quickly ask you to give your feedback, give your last questions. Here are the questions here. If you can put them in the chat, that would be great. Also, here's our next webishop coming up on the right there, and we'll give you guys a couple of minutes, and then we'll wrap up and do karakia. I'd appreciate it if you all stay for karakia, just so we can whakanoa our wairua. And then after that, I'll let you go, and then we'll hopefully see you afterwards with the after webishop stuff. So yeah, I'll let you guys have a couple of minutes to give any feedback.
If I might just fill that space in the 2 minutes you've provided for people to provide their feedback, Mereana. Ngā mihi tuatahi ki te kai karakia. Tēnā koe, Sione, for your blessings on our mahi today. And ngā mihi tūrua ki te rangatira o Wati, Mereana hoki. Ngā mihi nui tō mātauranga, nui te mātauranga. Thank you very much to both of you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Emma.
If I may add on a word or two, while our colleagues and friends responding to those questions that you have there on screen, Mereana. You know, as the Executive Director of the Health Promotion Forum, and as Mereana said, this is firstly a learning environment, and it is a safe learning environment. And we allow conversations like this, we support it, so that we have a searching kōrero, searching conversations to enable us to move forward together. And then we see things from a Māori perspective and how things are done from a Māori way. And wish to acknowledge, Wati, the work that you do. It resonates with me as a Moana Nui Kiwa person, but also as the Executive Director of a mainstream organization, the Health Promotion Forum. I have the bounty of working with Seme Sonduri for more than 10 years at Massey University. And your wisdom that you have shared today reminds me of when the seedlings were planted for Whānau and how it has emerged to become a policy influencing the motto 10 years later. The parallels of looking at the core principles and values, values that are common to us as fellow human beings, but more obvious and prevalent within, indigenous worlds. So not a surprise that it resonates with your Pacifica Whānau and other indigenous, peoples around the world. But we support, corridor like this, and it's wonderful that you are able to share your journey. All the best with your work and MSD, and we ourselves, the Health Promotion Forum, happy to look into this further and to contact you. Very interesting. It's empowering for the whānau, but it's also great learning for public services, especially government agencies. As we have seen, the tide has changed. The government has broadened its understanding of advancement and progress to a framework of well-being, not just GDP, not just financial outcomes. And the government is, after many decades, willing to be more collaborative and work as partnership, as real partnership, and to listen, to the community, listen to the whānau, listen to the hapu, listen to the iwi. And it's a wonderful space for New Zealand to be at. And it's timely, the work that you do. And we totally support it as part of our commitment to Te Tiriti or Waitangi ourselves. Our organization is mainstream. I have told Mereana it's not an opportunity for her to, take control. It's an opportunity to allow everyone to come into our whare and have a conversation that will advance us together and move us together forward. But it's wonderful to, for me to listen in and to learn from your wisdom and to see the wonderful questions that have come through. And I'm sure, we will think more deeply about these issues that you raised and the questions, raised, and we will take away a lot of lessons from this. We offer workshops that offer practical solutions, but often it's important to look at the processes and the journey before then you will understand, why the more practical solutions and these strategies and actions put in place. So it's wonderful for you to share your story, and we understand it and we learn from that. Thank you.
Kia ora, Sione. Anything from you, Wati, before I close off in Karakia?
Yes, just one more thing. To my whānau up in Whangarei, I'd like to mihi out to you. I used to work at Whangarei Youth Space, so if you ever get the chance to go past there, can you send on my hellos to them? Kia ora. And thank you very much to everyone today for allowing me to share with you. And I really look forward to actually meeting you all face to face. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Wati. And just for me, before we Emma, do you want to do the photo? Is Emma there?
Photo's done.
Too quick. All right then. So last words from me. Thank you everyone for joining us. No tararo, nāku tararo, ka ora ai te iwi. With your knowledge and our knowledge, we can all provide sustenance for our people. And again, I want to remind you that I'm going to reach out to some of you and I'm going to ask you what you guys have been doing in your spaces around this treaty-based organizational stuff, because I want to hear it, I want to share it so that more people can be informed and more people can have strategies in their kete. Nō reira, ka inoi tātou. Kia tātou katoa, te ata whai atua tātou ariki a ihu kraiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmene. Nō ora mai koutou.
Thank you.